Hello, I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman, Chairman of the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee. The American Fire Service is rich in tradition and culture. A firefighter's life is filled with many emotional highs and lows. Stories of major fires, national disasters, medical calls, firehouse living, and family life are often verbally shared from one generation to another. Many times these stories are lost forever when a firefighter passes away. In an effort to preserve these stories, in 2019, the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee launched a new program of recording audio-video of our retirees' lives. These stories will be shared on our website, gfhbc.org. In 2020, we did not record because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please listen as these firefighters share their life experiences with all of us.
My name is John David Lindsay. I'm 60 years old. I'd had 31 years with the fire department, and I retired, 8 years ago, so that would have been January of 2014. When I retired, I was the fire marshal, so that would be assistant chief rank. Actually, grew up here in Greensboro, went to all levels of school here, and wasn't born here, but I did grow up in Greensboro. I'm not related to any former or current fire department members. Well, before I came on the fire department, I was actually working for the Salisbury Fire Department. I had been there with them for a year, and decided that I wanted to come back to Greensboro and hopefully be a firefighter here, and applied here. Well, the reason I wanted to become a firefighter was, if you ask my wife that, she knows a story from when I was a child, which was that she heard from my mother when I was a child, and I heard the fire trucks coming down the street one day, and I was actually in the bathtub taking a bath. And the way my mother tells it, I do not remember this, but she says I jumped out of the bathtub and ran out into the front yard with no clothes on to see the fire truck go down the street. Now, if that's what sparked it, then that's probably something that I wouldn't remember that far back. But the real reason, I guess, is because once I was out of high school and I had begun to look to my future and try to decide what I wanted to do, and begin taking some college courses and that type of thing, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I got interested because my next door neighbor was actually a retired Greensboro fire captain, and he had retired here and moved over to and gone back to work at the Salisbury Fire Department. And his nephew, who was a friend of mine, began to talk to me about asking me would I like to consider going to Salisbury to interview with, at the time, the chief at the Salisbury Fire Department was Ted Melvin, who used to be a chief here in Greensboro. And at the time, I really wasn't in a career. I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and that sounded like a really exciting thing to do, and I just decided to take the chance, and we went down to Salisbury, sat down with Ted Melvin in a room. He had his feet kicked up on the table, and he was smoking a cigarette, and he looked at us two guys from Greensboro and said, I've got some openings here in Salisbury if you guys want to come on down here and take a chance at it. And that's kind of how it got started. When I came on the Greensboro Fire Department, the hiring process was, I remember the interview, and at the time, it was a pretty extensive interview, and they had, I remember they had a psychological testing process and a physical fitness process. At the time, it's called the agility test, where you go on the drill ground and you do a lot of different exercises. And at the time, they just had very, very generic exercises like push-ups and sit-ups and that type of thing. And they timed you for it. When I originally went and got interviewed, I was not hired. I was called and said that I had been put on a waiting list. And that was a little bit disheartening at the time, but I was hoping that I would be able to come to work here in Greensboro. And I was fortunate. I remember several weeks past that. I don't remember how many weeks it would have been, but I did get a call from, at the time, Battalion Chief Brad Cox, and he asked me if I was still interested in the job, and I said absolutely. I'm pretty sure the starting salary at the time for me was around $17,300 or $500, something like that. Well, in my training class, I think we started out with about, it was a fairly large class, I think, for the time. I think we had about 27 in my class to start out with. I remember quite a few of them. Do you want me to name? Well, I wrote it down just to see if I could see how many I could remember. Of course, there was Mitzi. She stood out to me. She was actually on my team. We were the Brown team. Mitzi Rice. And one of my good friends throughout my career here. She passed away later on from cancer. And but we had a great relationship together on our team together. We also had Clarence Hunter, Harold Haney, Chris Baldwin, Calvin Carter, who actually left and went on to become a High Point police officer. And these are the ones that I could remember, and I actually wrote them down, and then I kind of went back and double checked and see, and there was a few that I had forgotten about, and a couple of them that didn't make it all the way through training. But Chris Baldwin, Calvin Carter, Charlie Crabtree, Rick Cross, Andre Douglas, Scott Eanes, Tim Gibbs, Adrian Griffin, Chris Hare, Barry Johnson, who left also and went on to another career path, and let's see here, Andrew Nyland, who a lot of you will know passed away in a car accident years later, and Marty Siemens, David Stafford, Bob Smith, and Eric Strimple. Those are the ones that I could remember right off the top of my head. So that was a pretty good number of them. Yes. Training is pretty serious. Yes, one of the stories that there was a couple of things that I remembered that ended up being kind of funny. I remember this pretty specifically because it happened with Tim Gibbs, and Tim's always been a very good friend of mine and still is to this day. And one day I think we were probably kind of in a lull, and it wasn't very busy that particular day, and we had been issued our first Greensboro Fire Department baseball caps. And this cap had cursive writing on it. It said Greensboro Fire Department on it. And it was in white letters, and the cap was blue. And we were probably a little bit bored at that moment, and I know Tim was bored, and he was trying to figure out how he could enhance his baseball cap. So he took a yellow highlighter, and the white letters on his baseball cap, he decided he was going to change them to a yellow color to kind of make them stand out a little bit, I think. And so he did that. And at the time, Captain Paul Brooks was our training captain, and he caught wind that Tim had colored his baseball cap. And it didn't set very well with Paul, as you might imagine. And I don't remember what punishment Tim may have gotten for that, but I do remember the vein in Paul's head popping out a little bit when he got angry that day because of what Tim had done to that baseball cap. And I know there was repercussions, and I don't remember exactly what happened with Tim that day, but Paul and Brad Cox were not very happy with that. So that was something that was funny that happened. Another thing that I remember specifically that kind of stood out was each one of us, at some point during training, we had to present ourselves to the class, and basically you would go up and you would show the class or explain to them some type of a talent that you had. Okay? And I know there was people that had some very, very interesting talents. Like one of our folks decided that he was going to show the class how to inseminate a cow, artificially inseminate a cow. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of what happened there, but that is a true story that did happen, and I thought that was a pretty unique talent. Well, I was kind of floundering with what talent to do when my time came up, and me and a couple of other guys were we didn't really know of something that really stood out that we wanted to do as an individual. So we got together as a group, and along with Mitzi Rice, who was our leader, we put on basically tights, and we danced to the class in front of all of our group to a specific some kind of music. I'm not sure exactly what the tune was at the time, but it was kind of like a disco type dancing with, and we all had tights on. Some of us, I think, had on wigs and maybe even sunglasses, and we kind of just put on a little performance there that to this day I can tell you that I know where there are some pictures of that event. I'm not necessarily going to share them with anybody, but during training, there were times when I think we all realized not only that we were doing something that was special, but how special this department was compared to a lot of our fellow departments around us in our state and everything. And we probably didn't understand at the time how not only, I guess at the time the training was so advanced and so just very Class A training, just the best of the best. And we didn't know at the time, again, being so green, we didn't really know that we were privileged to be where we were. And I think it was just each week, as each week progressed, you begin to come together more as a team and understand the value of teamwork and what it really meant from that perspective. And that kind of led you into your career as you begin to, once you came through training, you went to the different stations and you met new people there, developing that teamwork and everything with those guys, and just kind of forming a bond with them to let them, to really understand the importance of what you were doing. Yes, my first station assignment was right here at Fire Station 1, and I was on Engine 2. We had Engine 1 and Engine 2 together. A lot of the times when you left the station, one went left and one went right. And when you had an individual call, Engine 1 would typically go right, and Engine 2 would go left. And then we had, when obviously you go on a lot of calls together as well. First captain, which was for a very brief period of time, was Ralph Sutton. Remember some things about Ralph that, again, not only was he, I'd say he was one of my early mentors, even though he was only specifically my captain for a couple of months, because at that time the captains rotated each year. And we only had him for probably September, October, November, December. So about 4 months I had Ralph, but he was a very unique individual. He had seen a lot of actions in his career. At that time he was probably approaching the end of his career. Just a real great guy to mentor from, and he was very patient. And he knew the apparatus one side and up one side and down the other, and he knew the equipment. He knew how to keep you safe, and he knew how to keep you together as a team, and I think that was very important. I had a nickname, and it has nothing to do with the fire service per se, but the only person that ever gave me a nickname, and it came from Brandon Weaver, was Dapper G. And Dapper G was basically because of, at the time, and even prior to coming on the fire department, I worked at a men's clothing store, and I really liked to dress very nicely. And for whatever reason, Brandon coined that name for me, and it kind of stuck with the people that I work with. So even when I see some people today, the greeting is Dapper. So that's how they greet me. Pranks that I remember that really stands out to me at the time was here at Station 1, and it typically would occur in the evenings when we kind of had some downtime, and we would sit around, and some of the older guys that had been here for a while, some of the captains and firefighters that had been here for a while, kind of already knew how this happened and knew how to make this happen. So they would use the telephone system, and they would call one station and pretty much simultaneously call another station at the same time, and join those stations up together, and we could hear the conversations, and the guys would answer the phone, hello, and the other guy would say, hello, did you call me? No, I didn't call you, did you call me? And that would go back and forth, and just that type of thing was just kind of innocent fun things that we did, and I think a lot of the stations that were the brunt of this prank, they didn't really know what was going on, they didn't know where it was coming from, so I think that was kind of some things that were done by several of the legendary captains up here at this station that were here a lot. And as far as firehouse living goes, the crews that I had at the stations that I was at, there was a mix of that. When I started out here, the guys here at this station, we had the two engine companies together, so we had typically, we would have anywhere from 7 to 8 or 9 people together eating at the same time. And we always cooked, and that was a great fellowship time. It was a great experience to find out who the good cooks were and who the bad cooks were. And that actually presents a story as well where one of the old captains that was here at the time, he was very particular about what he cooked. And I remember this fairly clearly one time when he had cooked a meal. I can't tell you what it was. I don't remember exactly what it was. But one of the newer guys made a comment about the fact that he did not like what had been cooked. And the captain took that to heart and was very offended by that. And he took the whole meal that he had cooked that night in a pot, and he threw it in the trash can. Turned it upside down and threw it in the trash can. And he was making a statement that if you didn't like my cooking, you better keep your mouth shut, or otherwise you're not going to eat. So the whole station suffered for that reason, for that night. But yeah, we did cook together as a group. I did go to one other station at the time where Station 14 had a different dynamic where we only had 4 people there at one time, sometimes only 3. And a lot of the times with just those few amount of people, people would bring individual meals. So it wasn't the same dynamic. It just wasn't as much of a team type. I wouldn't say I'm a good cook. I was probably a mediocre cook, and I had several different things that I liked to cook. One of the things that I thought was a specialty of mine was spaghetti and meatballs and salad, and pretty simple meal, but at the same time I knew it tasted pretty good and everybody liked it, so I never really had any complaints about it. So
didn't get through the trash.
Hamburgers and hot dogs, that's a pretty easy staple to do as well. So those two were two of my favorite things, I think, to cook. The era that I grew up in, I always felt like dorm living was just a much better, and it has its pluses and its minuses as well. I think altogether, living in the dorm setting like we did at Station 16 on hazmat, again, it just fosters more of an atmosphere of togetherness and brotherhood and sharing stories back and forth together and being in that group together. And on the other hand, though, to me, I think individuals they're living now in individual cubicles, you don't have that opportunity to be able to fellowship. And it's just one other way that the fellowship has been reduced and taken away. And there's no choice for me, even though at the time, one of the downsides of that is living in a dorm environment where you've got people that snore a lot. Okay. Have you heard that before? I'm a very light sleeper, so I struggle with that some, and I would even at times wear earplugs, which was very beneficial at the time to be able to weather that storm. But other than that, really, I don't see any downside to it at all. I think it was just so much better to have that community environment together to be able to do that. What I hear today about the environment around the fire station on the weekends, at nights and things, it's not the same as it used to be. I think back when we started, there was much more of a family type atmosphere, and where families would come and get together even for a couple of hours on a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon, and just bring the kids with them, put the kids on the fire truck and let them play around a little bit and that type of thing. But from what I hear today, it's not the same anymore. I think it appears to be more of a individualistic mindset where people just kind of go off in the corner and do their own things, if you will. And they just don't, not only do they don't fellowship at the fire station, but they don't fellowship as much, I think, away from the fire station as they used to. I think when a retired firefighter visits the station, it's a two-way street how that can be beneficial to both sides. I think, the longer I'm away from the fire department as an active member, you kind of begin to feel like maybe your contribution doesn't count as much as it used to, and your relationships are not there anymore. You don't know a lot of the people that are there anymore. And at the same time, I think it's very important for firefighters that are at the station to continue to welcome retirees when they come in, just to not only to make them feel at home, but also that there's a lot I think they can learn from these guys. And whether it's just a funny story or whether it's a more serious type learning experience, I think it's very important. And that, again, that goes back and forth between both ways there. You can really benefit for reaching out to the retiree, or even having the retiree come in and reach out to the new guys, and just share stories with them, share fun things, and continue that relationship back and forth. I think to have a program like this where you can present a print, it also provides the retiree the ability to give something back, and also to be able to maybe in some ways kind of extend their legacy. And I think that's important. And I think if I understand correctly, it can be dedicated to a specific station, right? To show not only, and then it will show the new guys as well a historical viewpoint that maybe they wouldn't have understood or known before. So that these particular guys have been here and done it, and it's important for them to want to continue for people to understand what that legacy was. And I think the interview process is a great experience for people like myself, who I've been gone now for 8 years from the department, and to be able to not only jog my memory of things that I've had happen with me in the past, but just to be able to share my story in a way, and to be able to share the experiences that I had here, the friends that I had here and still continue to have to this day. It's such a large part of your life. I mean, for me, 31 years here. When I retired, my wife shared with me about the first 6 months that I retired, I was kind of lost, because I didn't have that every day, 5 days a week, whatever experience. And again, I had a little bit different experience because of the last 17 years of my career was an office type environment, which was 8 to 5. It wasn't the same 24-hour experience that I had at the fire stations early on. A different type of camaraderie, though, existed during that time. But I think it's good to be able to not only reminisce, but to also have a legacy that you're leaving for other people to be able to just read about, and to understand more about the culture that might have been 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and to see how things have changed, and to maybe even look back and say, I could really learn from this, and maybe apply this now to where it might make a difference now. And I know a lot of things change, the cultures change, the people change, the levels of training, everything is all completely different, and it's very easy, I think, for a lot of that to get lost in the shuffle. And when you can apply somebody's name to in an experience or and really kind of think about the history of what happened here. And whether it's somebody that you knew or somebody that you didn't know, you can still put names with faces. And matter of fact, just today I looked online and went over and found the whole the yearbook that came out. I think it's around 1988, maybe somewhere in that range. To go back and look at that book and to just look at the faces and see how people have changed and everything. It was just a fun thing to do for 15 minutes today, and I had that much time to do it, and I really enjoyed doing that. I was in the suppression for the first 13 years of my career. Well, fire suppression is the basic path for about 90% of the employees. You're on a fire truck, an engine company, or a ladder company. You're at the station 24 hours a day, and then you have the 2 days off, 24, 48. And you're at a station, you're there, like I said, 24 hours a day with your crew, which consists typically of 3 or 4 people that you're with, and you don't leave, you stay there the whole day. And so that's fire suppression. And then for me, I decided, which is also part of suppression, but I went to hazmat, which hazmat is a dual role. At the time, you had specialties that were beginning to come to the front, like hazmat would be one specialty that was around for a while. And then high-level rescue came, and that was a big thing, and swift water rescue. So they all had their kind of era where they were like number one. We want to do that. Well, at the time, hazmat was for me, so that was where I went and got to stay on the hazmat team for 7 years, which was part of suppression. So you had the dual role there. But later on, I decided that I had an interest in code enforcement and fire prevention, so I decided to switch gears. I had one small child at home. My wife had given birth not too far back, and I decided that for my best interest, an 8 to 5 opportunity would be good at the time, and I went to switch gears, and that was kind of an up-and-coming thing at the time. Code enforcement was not something that was really sought after a whole lot by a lot of people, but it was for me, and it worked out great. It also allowed me to not only find a niche, but develop relationships over the years that now have provided me with a second career after my retirement, where I made relationships in the business community and was able to find a great job that I have enjoyed for the last 7 years. So yeah. Well, I think as you begin to experience different types of calls, there were several types of things that stood out to me. Some of them would have been just from an excitement standpoint, like we had a big fire downtown at the courthouse, federal courthouse building back in the late 80s. And when you start to experience the larger fires like that, where you've got a large contingent of fire companies that are at the scene, a lot of times you can go many, many years without those types of things occurring. And so I think that one, the federal courthouse fire, stood out to me as one thing that was a bigger fire, and it was more, it was very exciting. It was during the day. There was a lot of people around. There was a tanker and a tanker train crash fire on Chimney Rock Road back in the 80s that was pretty spectacular at the time, and I do remember that one pretty clearly, being a part of that one. The difficult side of that is when you're at a fire where you have a death or a serious injury, and but as you're working those types of fire scenes, at the time everything's pretty methodical. You're doing a job, you're with a crew, you've got a task to perform, and even though in the back of your mind that there's been victims in that situation, I don't think it really hits you till later that you've had a fire death occur or a serious injury. And for me, those were the toughest times to have to deal with, the after effects of those types of things, where you can kind of come back to the station and think about what happened and what you did, what you didn't do. Did things go good? Did things not go so well? Another side of that, though, is from my perspective, when I was in the fire prevention office, being in a situation where your job is now not putting out the fires, but it's investigating the fires after the fact, and that does include difficult situations where you're having to photograph bodies and things like that, and methodically go through an investigation process where you've got fire deaths and have to record those, and those are much more personal, I think, to have to be able to have to investigate those, and just to have that to be a part of your life on a more regular basis. Let's see, during my career I had a number of people that I think were really great mentors to me. I think early on, certainly starting out on a fire truck, I had my first crew was Ralph Sutton, Dennis Penix, Otis Sellers, and Jay Lewis. And great crew, fun group, fun bunch of guys. But those are the ones that take you under their wing early on and basically show you this is how you do it. You know, you can learn a lot in training, and you learn you definitely learn so much in training about doing the job, about safety, and about so many things. But when you get assigned to a company, you realize that this is real life now, and this is, and those are the guys that really took the time and the effort to make sure not only that you knew your job, but they also make sure that you stayed safe. And they were right there beside you throughout the fires and the rescue calls and the emergency calls and the medical calls and that type of thing, and they're working with you side by side, watching what you're doing to make sure that you're not only making the right calls, but just being successful as a company together. Everybody wanted it to work out the best it could work out, the best possible scenarios. And the folks I had early on in that scenario were great mentors to me. Joe Smith is another captain that took me under his wing, and not only did he work with me at the fire station, but we worked some off-duty projects together. There's so many things that I didn't know outside of the fire department that I learned from guys that I worked with, like construction, for example, how to build certain things, how to do different types of landscaping that is not just the normal mowing the grass. There's so many different things that I learned from different people. Basic electricity, how to do basic wiring, that type of thing, without shocking yourself, But people like Dennis Penix and Dale Combs that I worked with early on at the fire station as I was a rookie, those are the ones that really probably stand out in my mind and really showed me not only about life, but just showed me what to do just to keep myself safe and to do a good job, and to have a great work ethic that that I was just trying to develop. And a lot of times you don't really know how to do that, so you kind of really latch on to these people to help show you the way and show you what to do to keep yourself successful. And there's so many different things that they provide for you. There's different concepts of things that you don't realize, like public speaking, for example. How do you become a better public speaker? That type of thing. And there's people that you can watch and learn from that tell you how their mannerisms are, and show you how to become a better public speaker, or how to better, just anything. Rolling hose, all the things that you had to do as a task. Some of those things were done. Some people had tricks, hey, this is the way you should do it because this is a better way to do it. And you learn from those people. And guys like that, Danny Underwood, Danny Shoemate, on hazmat team, I had so many people there that were so helpful. Just, captains, and Jimmy Williams was one of my captains there, and they just have so many so many ways that they can be mentors to you and help you do a better job. Yes, there were several heartbreaking moments for me along the way. I think, of course, in my career, two of the people that I went through training with have passed away over the years. Andrew Nyland, who was in a car accident, and then Mitzi, who passed away. She was a great friend of mine, and she died from cancer. And that was a journey with Mitzi that we went through all as a group. And because we worked together in the office, in the fire prevention office, and Mitzi was our educator at the time. She had such a great presence in our community and all over the state, and was just so well respected. And her programs were always changing and evolving, and she always strived to make things better. And cancer really hit her hard, and but that was probably a couple of things that really stood out to me. Another one would have been the fact that I was on a training fire with Jackie Beard, and was about 15 or 20 feet away from him when he fell over with a heart attack and died. Being a part of things like that, where you know the people and you work with them, you're familiar with them. One day you're joking with them, and the next day they're gone. I think those are the things that really stand out to me. I think there's a lot of proud moments for me as an individual. I know I had the opportunity. A couple of things really I think stand out to me that I was a part of. One of them would be the year that I became Manager of the Year for the city and Employee of the Year for the fire department. And the other thing that kind of reflects to me is the fact that I became, for whatever reason, I became pretty good at writing up award presentations, award submittals for people to help them put their self in for awards. And I just had a way with words when I wrote things up. I was good about submitting information for employees of mine that would put them up for awards, or hopefully give them the opportunity to be considered for an award or something like that. And I was successful at several points of getting people recognized. And I think that's very important to when you have employees, to not only mentor them, but also to, in any way you can, to just promote them and give them the opportunity to really shine in different ways. I never worked with female firefighters at the fire station, but I did have the opportunity again to work in the office environment with females. It was great. I mean, the females that I worked with in the fire prevention office, very passionate about their jobs. Again, each one of them had individual roles that were different than the other ones. Mitzi Rice, her role as the fire educator was probably the one that really stands out the most to me, because of the fact that I enjoyed being a part of that. And for many years, early on, you got to be in a situation where you did, if you did puppet shows, for example, early on, those puppet shows were fun to do, but at the time I didn't feel like I had a good mentor of an educator person that really showed me how far you could take a program like that and how much you could really enhance it to really provide an experience for your whole community to be involved in. And I watched Mitzi work with different kids groups, different age groups, and she just did so great with all of them. She could relate to them so well, and with her bringing the dog of hers into the mix to be a part of her program, it just showed how much creativity she had, and I was really impressed with that. Absolutely do it all over again. I think I've often told people this, that I never once came to the fire department to work a day that I didn't enjoy being there. And I think that was probably something that really made me feel like that I had chosen the right career, and the fact that I made the relationships that I've made is something special, and you can't replace that. I don't really know that there's anything that I would really change, to be honest with you, because I did have the opportunity to choose a career path that I enjoyed along the way, different ones, from different stations to the hazmat to going into the office, and those were things that I desired to do, and I was given the opportunity to do those things, and really didn't want to change anything. I would probably describe a successful firefighter as an individual who is a go-getter, is strong not only physically but mentally, is a good communicator, is a good team player. I would describe, and that can be male or female, it doesn't really matter. I think we had the opportunity to promote and to develop a lot of great female firefighters in our department, and to have a team type desire to have a camaraderie with a group of people like that. I think it's real important to be a part of that and to be an individual who cares about his fellow co-workers and who strives to do the very best they can do on a daily basis. I think in my lifetime, again, not just the fire department, but in general, I've had a lot of different mentors over the years that, including my parents, I really admire. But I think one that stands out to me would have been a youth leader that I had in my church when I was in middle school, at the time junior high school, and high school. And this gentleman, his name was Alman Reams, and Alman was my youth leader when I was in junior high school, and Alman is the leader that showed me what being a Christian was all about and encouraged me, and eventually under his leadership he showed me the way to accept Christ as my Lord and Savior, and I think he's probably one of the biggest influences that I have kept in my mind, and know that know the importance and understand the importance of that. My health has been pretty good. I'm very, very, very blessed. Even when I was back in the office, I've had some lower back problems, but they have been overcome. I've been able to overcome them in most cases. Don't play sports anymore like I used to, but all in all, I feel very, very strong and very healthy, and just very blessed to be in the health I'm in. I wish I could keep eating all the foods I used to eat all the time, but can't do that anymore. I think I would like the fire department to remember that I gave 100%, that I was fair, that I was deliberate, that I cared about people, I cared about feelings, I cared about the task, that I strived to do the very best I could do every day that I came into work. Well, let's see. What rookie I would give? What advice would I give to rookies? I would say that I would, if I did not consider this job a career path, then I would probably say go somewhere else and look for a different job. I would like for them I would like for my family to remember me as a good father, a good husband, that I love the Lord, that I tried every day to do the very best I could, that I did make mistakes, that I tried to learn from my mistakes and to not continue to commit them. That I was always a part of my children's lives, and I always enjoyed being around them and being a part of what they did, and was a positive influence on how they conduct themselves as adults. And hopefully that they will take experiences they had with me, positive and negative, and be able to better themselves as they become adults and parents and grandparents. I've enjoyed my career. I've enjoyed my life. I would say I wouldn't do it differently in the future. If I had the opportunity to do it again, I would definitely do it again. It's been a great ride, and now I've become a grandfather for the first time. It's a different era of my life, but I still want to give 100% and just to be thankful and to love people, you know. I miss the people. I miss the camaraderie. I miss the conversations, the relationships, the one-on-ones. That's the main thing.
In closing, the Greensboro Firefighters History Book Committee hopes you have gained a greater insight into the dangers, the challenges, and emotional events that have influenced and shaped the American firefighter.